Okay, welcome to the Franchise Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Giuseppe Grammatico, your franchise guide, and today we have a very special guest. Today we have Lance Freeman. Lance has been in franchising for 25 years as a multi-unit franchisee, area developer, master franchisor, and national franchise developer with numerous top 100 franchisors, and is currently the president of franchise development for Exponential Fitness, the largest boutique fitness company in the world. Lance is a franchise executive with a proven track record and has awarded over 3,000, I'll repeat that, 3,000 franchises in the last 5 years. Lance, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Giuseppe. It's an honor, and always fun to hang out with you.
Awesome. That's great. Well, that's a very, very impressive bio. So what haven't you done in franchising? Because you've pretty much covered everything.
Well, I don't know that I have, actually. I always tell people, I'm embarrassed to say I've been in the industry for over 2.5 decades, but it makes me feel old. But I've kind of really stuck in one lane. I really have, and really largely retail, semi-absentee based business models, and just with a really healthy dose of really fitness and wellness and a little bit of beauty in there. But mostly fitness and franchising and retail is just it's the only lane I know. So I've never dipped into some other spaces, and so I guess I kind of just stuck to one lane,
Right. Nothing wrong with that if it works, right? And it seems like you're doing really well. So
I'm passionate about it too. It's and I think that helps. In fact, I literally was telling my wife this morning. I said, I don't take for granted that I wake up every day going, God, I get to do what I love in the industry. That's all I know, and with the people that I love surrounding myself with, and brands that we believe in and that we're really excited about, what's happening with them. So it's pretty neat.
And that's rare. You talk to a lot of people. It's like, well, are you happy? Well, I'm doing well, but they're not really passionate about what they do. So that's a win. When we talk about success, that's a major success in my book. So awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the show. I know you got obviously a lot on your plate. So if you can, fill us in a little bit. So gave a little bit of a brief bio, but for the average listener to the Franchise Freedom Podcast, it's a corporate executive. It's someone with 5-10 years experience looking to invest in their first business, whether it's a franchise or not. They're just trying to figure out what that next step is. So can you tell us a little bit about, your journey? Where did it all start? How did you end up at Expo?
Oh, thank you. I'll try to make it short and sweet, but I started working for an original entrepreneur of a fitness concept literally right after college, and he decided to start to get into franchising this model, and I loved that brand and that business model, and was again really passionate about it. So it kind of matched up my I guess desire to really get into business, but also with the particular service that we were providing. So started down that path, and actually had no money at that stage, and so was able to scrape up an investor to really purchase one of the first stores in that concept, and then through building that store to success, was able to buy subsequent stores and scale to 6 units in that concept, and then in that brand, they started to launch another franchise model called the Master Franchise Opportunity, where I was able to basically become, in a sense, a partnership with the franchise store to develop the market and support it operationally after we had awarded the market with franchisees. I'd say that's probably where I cut my teeth most in franchising, especially on the operational support side of it, because I quickly learned what the difference. I knew what it was to operate my own stores, but after supporting franchisees and seeing the difference in really those that were the top performers, those that were average, or those that were struggling. And I fortunately was one of the top performers, but I get calls from franchisees all over the country going, "What are you doing different?" And what's the, and at that time it was kind of new to franchising, and I felt embarrassed because I'm certainly not the most creative guy in the world.
Right.
I'm not the smartest person either, but the one thing I did do really well was I just followed the plan. And so I quickly learned in supporting franchisees that it wasn't the marketing gurus or someone that had figured out a magic bullet that were the top performers were doing something very different. In fact, it was the opposite. Those that were really executing the plan and the model that the franchisor had were your top performers, and it still is true today. I'm sure you're nodding your head. It's just
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I had an opportunity. I had an investor that approached me to buy my businesses at one point. I wasn't really interested, but the multiple kept getting better. So I had some nice checks cut and sold those businesses and said, hey, I can build something else now, and continued down that path. And I met up with the CEO of the company that I'm currently with, Anthony Geisler, about 6 years ago, when he was purchasing a little no-name brand called Club Pilates. And fast forward, we've got 9 brands now, just short of 3,500 licenses awarded globally in 13 countries, almost 1,800 doors open domestically. And it's just been just an insane growth path, and a lot of fun working with him as a partner.
That's impressive. And it's funny, when you were talking about following a system, and people ask me all the time, it's, what's the key to success? And I said, and why have other franchisees specifically not done well? And I said, well, did they follow the system, and were they matched the right company? And two basic things. And people are like, that's a very good point. I followed the system, but maybe I got into something where it just didn't match or didn't align with what I wanted. I wanted X and I got Y. I didn't want high turnover and minimum wage employees, and I got into the restaurant industry. And you hear that all the time. And it's two basic things, yet I feel like I'm constantly repeating that. So I'm glad we're all saying the same thing. It makes me feel a lot better.
Oh, it's so true. One of the earlier systems I was in, it had a lot of organic growth, meaning they didn't use, great consultants like you to really support what we look at as a matchmaking process. So, we get candidates that would come in the process that like the idea of the concept and think that that's what they want to do. They move forward. And then on the other side of it, they turn out to be unhappy, even if they're doing well, but just because they don't like what they're doing, because they didn't really understand what they were getting into, or if that model really matched up with their needs or values and what they were trying to achieve from building wealth and income. So I've seen it over and over again. And again, that's why we love working with great consultants like you, because we know when we get a candidate that is referred, that we have a lot better potential for a match, not only for someone that's wants to move forward, but just someone that is going to really be a happy franchisee making money in our system. That's ultimately what we're looking for,
Right. And I tell that to everyone, the franchisor, Lance, is looking for happy franchisees that are going to be successful, right? I mean, they're going to refer other franchisees. They're going to buy additional stores, territories, and things like that. And it's pretty basic when you look at it, right? You don't want to be mismatched, and that's what we do. We try to match people to not just what their interests are. I like pizza, so I'm going to buy a pizza franchise. It's about what the role is in the business. So we had a whole episode on that this morning. So that's fresh. So I'm ready to put that out there. So we talked prior to the recording, and I have a background in investments, and the big thing was it was a big investment firm, one of the largest, and we had various mutual funds and managed accounts, and it was the power of that major brand behind you. Tell us a little bit about Expo, because that's one of the things that I think attracts people to Exponential is now 9 brands, if I'm not mistaken, and just a ton of support. And I definitely want to talk about how that support came through during COVID and during the pandemic. But tell us just a little bit about Expo, and just what are the benefits to that first time potential franchisee looking to invest in a franchise. What is the benefit of a large company like Expo and the offerings to each of their franchisees?
It's a great question. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that very much. We're really proud that we had literally 1,700 locations open last year when COVID hit, and we're proud to say today we did not have one permanent closure, and that's a wow. Really neat to be able to say after going through a pandemic and a crisis like we did in retail. But I think the biggest thing that, I would say, for executives that are researching concepts and looking at a franchise model, you really have to look at the leadership. That's a big part of what you're buying into a franchise model. And I think that's where I would say, our leadership just shined, last year, especially with COVID, where a lot of franchisors were P&L conscious and furloughed a bunch of people, and kind of took safe harbor and shut down to wait out the storm.
Right.
Our leadership did the opposite and said, we're gonna stand up, we're gonna fight through this storm, and we are not going to furlough one employee. Everybody got paid the same as what they were making before. In fact, we added employees to our already 250 employee support center, and really turned it into a command center to make sure our franchisees and how we look at the relationship of our partners were really supported to get through this. And so I think, I always say it's harder to investigate franchise models when it's all roses, because you just don't know what it's going to be like when it hits the fan. And is that franchisor going to be a real partner to you? So I like to say last year was, people would say I'm crazy, but probably one of the best times to investigate franchise opportunities, to see, hey, how do they step up during a pandemic? Because everybody always wants to know, well, what happens in a worst case scenario? Well, I think we just went through it,
Right.
And
that is the worst.
So if you can talk to franchisees in a system that said, thank God, our franchisor was a real partner here. They stepped up for us. They made sure we didn't have to pay rent through, our COVID period. We either got a rental abatement or we got deferred rent. They helped me get my PPP money, because I wasn't paying rent and payroll. I kept 65-70% of my draft on, because they pivoted to, an on-demand Go system. So my free cash flow was as good or better than it was when my doors were open. And now that we're reopened and going forward, and our competition has shrunk 25 to 30%, we're more bullish on going forward than ever. And so if you can hear that out of the system, or something to the effect that they really stepped up, I think that is great to hear. And that's what we did with our partners. And we're in an incredible position right now, going forward with a lot of our competition taking a pretty good hit, and we opened 250 stores last year. So we just kept kind of bullish. You asked about the strength of and the power of multiple brands. I just see it in so many fashions. I started by saying the leadership is so incredible, but for us, while we don't have a kind of a siloed model where marketing is kind of shared over all 9 brands, we have 9 CMOs and 9 marketing teams. We have 9 presidents, brand presidents. We have 9 operational teams. We have 9 retail departments. So every brand has their own team that wakes up every day, lives, breathes, and eats their brand. But what's beautiful is they all meet up once a week as kind of I look at it as a huge brain trust. We've got 9 presidents getting together, talking about best practices, what's working well in their model, and et cetera, so that all of this kind of experience and collaboration then comes back to helping these brands win in their markets and what we're doing. So that's pretty huge. And then I think on top of that is resources. When a franchisor can step in and financially support partners in different ways to make sure that they get through challenging times, that's huge. And if the franchisor is kind of constrained and can't do that, then it's going to be harder to fight. So those are some of the things that I look for, just in terms of leadership and the value in a larger company. I think last thing, I'll shut up here, but I think that's pretty unique about our company is it's still as big as it is. I mean, we're the largest boutique fitness platform in the world by a pretty big gap at this point, by a 3x multiple. But even at that point, we still feel very entrepreneurial and nimble because of our leadership. And I think so. We still say to this day, when someone joins our system, we say, "You're joining our family," and it still feels like that, which is pretty unique.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I mean, not a single closure. That's amazing. And you look at it when we say the worst time. I think this has been, at least in my life, one of the worst times, which obviously in any worst time, whatever time frame we're looking at, there's always opportunity that comes from it. So, and questions I get all the time, and because of the craziness of the time, brick and mortar, people were scared. I mean, I work with candidates that weren't certain where to go, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in any, or not, I shouldn't say in any, but when you're looking at a brick and mortar location, you're looking at several months out after finding the site and permits and build out. So, just because you make a decision now, you're looking 3 to 6 months out, if not further, until that location is up and running. So have you seen from existing franchisees, and I know that each market is going to be different, but are there opportunities in real estate?
It's funny again, because I was kind of shouting from the rooftops through last year that now was probably one of the best times to get into retail in recent history, and people were kind of looking at me like I'm crazy because we're in the middle of a pandemic. But maybe it's my perspective having gone through 2008, and I looked at it really as a buy low opportunity at that point. Right. It's been such a healthy retail market for some time now that it's been a landlord world. And it felt really good, and still to this point right now, it feels really good to beat up on some landlords. Sorry for any landlords out there, but it's just it's incredible that now shoes on the other foot that we can really negotiate some substantial lease opportunities for our franchisees, tenant improvements, full build outs. We're seeing market rates 20 to 25% below market right now, and furthermore, just more inventory with great A+ retail that we really want to get into with our brands. So for me, looking at our models, I kind of look at your two biggest expenses in the business are rent and payroll. So if you can lock in your largest fixed expense payroll at below market for the next 10 years and beyond, and set yourself up for success right there. That's huge. So to your question about our existing franchise communities. We had 250 of them that signed leases last year, understanding what an opportunity to kind of not push the pause button and sit back, but to double down right now and dig in and lock in a lease, knowing, as you said, looking at the long ball here. Hey, I'm not going to open for 6, 7, maybe 9 months from now. By that time, obviously we've got vaccine rollouts happening, herd immunity happening, and probably more importantly, this built up, pent up demand and a wellness boom that's just happening now because of all of what's going on. And so it's interesting because I still get asked from people like, well, is fitness dead? And it's like they have no idea that the demand is not our problem. Our classes are all waitlisted at this point. It's butts and seats. It's right. How do we get more people in classes right now? And as we kind of continue to lift those capacity constraints in some markets that still have some capacity issues, it's really exciting, again, seeing what's happening with people wanting to get back to that sense of community, wanting to get back out. Anthony, our CEO, likes to say, the at-home kitchen has never replaced the restaurants. And same in our world.
Good point. Yeah, I like that.
no digital workout is going to replace really getting in and experiencing the energy in the four walls of that studio, and it just can't.
Right. And with COVID, is it the COVID 20 or did it get bumped up to the COVID 30? I don't know. I won't speak for myself because I know I tried some of the home workouts, which seemed nice for the first week, and that didn't last too long. So.
It's funny that you say, as I started saying it, people are looking to drop the COVID 15, then it did go to 20, and now I think it might
number.
But in all seriousness, it's interesting because we're actually seeing some different segments now that are coming into our business. Not just people that want to get back and want to continue to get healthy, but people that have been sitting on the couch for the last year and are not happy with the way they feel, and they want to get back to a community and they want to get healthy. And we're seeing a lot of those segments come in now. And it's so, again, we're seeing a level of utilization and demand that we've never seen before in our business. And so, it's interesting, some of the silver linings that have come out of this for us now that we're getting to the other side of it.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I read years ago, I read a book called, I don't know if you've read it, Blue Zones. I don't know if you've read the book. Great book. And talks about health and fitness and obviously, eating well. But the biggest thing was, having that sense of community, being able to be social. And that's it's equally weighted compared to eating well, working out, and everything else, meditation. There's, I think, 7 or 8, if not, actually, there's probably nine pillars that they have. So I think just getting out there in the community, it's healthy. Obviously, this was something that we hopefully will never see again, but I think having that sense of community and working out with other people, motivating each other. I know that's what I need, because it gets lonely in the basement when you're lifting weights and it's like, all right, now what's next? So no, that's awesome. That's
we've tracked it, over the years. It's interesting. Even after '08, there were a lot of segments that I think people thought would get crushed, like fitness or wellness spaces, that were probably one of just less than a handful of spaces that actually grew after '08. The fitness industry grew from a $19 billion industry to a $21 billion industry from '08 to 2011. One of very few segments that had that type of growth, and people would have previously said, oh, that's the first thing that's going to get cut, but not the case by any means. And so we're seeing the same thing now, a different type of kind of pullback, and it's bouncing back quickly. But at the same time, we're seeing just a huge surge in our model.
Awesome.
Yeah.
When I work with a potential candidate, someone looking at a particular franchise or just looking at franchising in general, I always, we mentioned this before, stress what's the owner's role. So you have to have interest, but can you see yourself in that role doing whatever the role is? So my question to you is, obviously Exponential has 9 different brands. So what does with well over, I forget what the number of total franchisees, what does the ideal franchisee look like? What's your ideal candidate that actually invests? Are they a health nut, or is this someone that's working out 7 days a week?
Yeah, I appreciate the question again, because there's so many misnomers here. We have actually over 1,000 franchisees, in our family of brands. And, I think it's less than 3% of the 3,100 franchisors in business today that ever open more than 100 doors. So we're certainly a large franchisor by perspective. But it's interesting, because I think one of the bigger misconceptions is that people that join franchise concepts or consider franchise models either have some background in that industry, or maybe they were business owners previously, or have experience in franchising. Not the case at all. It's actually the opposite. I'd say probably better than 90% of our new partners, as we look at it, our franchisees, have no business experience, have never owned a business or been in franchising before. And a lot of them, don't really have any experience relative to fitness per se. They might have a connection with it, in terms of seeing the benefits that it's providing to our members or in their community, or maybe they like working out to some degree themselves. But just as a relevant example, I'd say with our Club Pilates concept that we awarded about 900 licenses with, I would say 80% of our candidates had never taken a Pilates class before coming to one of our discovery confirmation days. So it really is not a prerequisite to. In fact, we don't want our partners to become the technician in the business. You've heard of the old, working on the business rather than in the business. So our typical franchisee is largely an executive that is either wanting to keep their day job, or maybe has gone through a restructure and now looking to take a different path to building income and wealth. Some are wanting to build income and wealth through franchising as a parallel strategy to keeping their job for a period before they say peace out to corporate America. But by and large, a high percentage of our franchisees are executives, and we love them because I always say, again, back to what we said kind of at the top here, our best performing franchisees are those that follow the plan. Right. And we have analyzed our numbers. Our top third of our system, based on just driving unit volumes or top line gross revenue, they utilize our GM model the most effectively. So 98% of them use a GM. They do not get caught up in managing the business themselves or the day-to-day operations or becoming the technician or answering the phones or any of that stuff.
Right.
So where we really want our owners in kind of in the ownership chair is providing leadership, to their manager and their team, but largely manage the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And as I like to say, manage the business by the numbers, or we look at it as, for the executives out there, the KPIs, our key performance indicators, which they have full access to in terms of diagnosing the business. And we provide a tremendous amount of support to make sure we're on the right path with them. But that's really it. We want them providing that leadership, looking at how do they grow their business. Our average franchisee owns 3 or more units over time that they develop, and so they're building a more substantial business, scaling, and so that's largely what we're looking for in our system. People that again just really want to build a substantial business. It's kind of almost secondary that they have a connection with whatever the modality is. So I'd say that's really our ideal franchisee.
Right. That's very interesting. So, and just to be clear, so there is a way of keeping your job and running a franchise, correct? Is that what you said through the semi-absentee?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. We have hundreds and hundreds in fact, that's the majority of our franchisees that will keep their job, at least initially, as they're building income in the business. But very, very doable, again, because it's a model that we call it semi-absentee, because obviously you can't cut a check and then just sit back and watch the dividends come in. But it should be at any point, 5 to 10 hours a week, in terms of really actively, working it, on the business, if you will. There's, you'll spend a little more time at it, just at that kind of that what we call pre-sale, soft open, grand open period in our business model, where you're hiring people and we want them to conduct second and third interviews with us as we really drive that process for them. But outside of that, once we have that grand opening, it's kind of, spin the plate on the and just keep managing the manager, and opening more studios is kind of the plan for our partners.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I talk about over 4,000 franchise companies out there. I don't know what the exact number is, but we'll go with 4,000 plus, and not everyone is built the same, right? I mean, just because there are two different fitness studios, we'll say Pilates, one is going to be structured completely different than the next. The end product may be the same, but how is what's the engine behind the company? So one of these days I'm thinking about doing a Mythbusters episode, because a comment made to me was, well, if I have enough money, then any franchise can be semi-absentee. And I said, no, some franchises don't allow it, and they don't have that program. And I've talked to franchisees that we've spoken in the past, and your entire team, and we talk about, train the trainer with there's an actual program. It's not just they train the franchisee and you wish them luck, and here's a manual to train your GM. There's an entire program in place, and not every franchise has that in place. So we've heard of, stepping up during COVID, semi-absentee ownership, and the support. These are questions that I encourage every prospective, future franchisee to ask these questions. And last year was the perfect time, right? What did you do for your franchisees? And not only that, speaking with the franchisees, how did the franchisor help you? I mean, the initial support is great, but 5 years from now, 3 years from now, knowing what you know now, the $1 million question, and we'll end it with this. The $1 million question, knowing what you know now, would you do it all over again? I think that maybe sums it up without getting into financials and everything else. I think that's a question that every, potential franchisee should be asking, unless you disagree or want to add to that.
I completely agree. And with everything you said, I think, one of the most important components of our educational process with our potential partners is getting them into what we call our validation process, where they are encouraged to talk to as many franchisees as they can in that process, to hear exactly that. Hey, is your franchisor being a partner to you? How are things going? Are you making money? Would you do this all over again? Right. All those important questions. And it's interesting to me. I won't call out names, but I just heard a story that just blew me away from that. a candidate was looking at another franchisor in our space, and they would not allow them to talk to any of their franchisees. In fact, were threatening to pursue legal action if they continue to pursue talking with franchisees. I said, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, because in fact, first of all, that's illegal. It's legally you have to allow folks to, but that would be a huge red flag for me if a franchisor said, no, we don't want you talking with our franchisees. It was one of the things we want to get into very early in our model, because we want you to hear, from our franchisees, because I think that is the best way to learn about what does a day in a life look like if you become a partner in one of our brands. So we really encourage it.
That's crazy. I mean, they're listed in the FDD, but some people, don't know that, right? They're investing in their first business. They think that's the norm, and it's like, okay, well, I can't talk to franchisees. I'll invest and cross my fingers. So we try to educate as much as possible. There's a ton of info online, and I think as a consultant, as an advisor, we add that extra 1%, and it's basically how to implement. What do you do with this information now that there's 4,000 franchises and this and that? Like, what do I actually do with this information? And I think just people get overloaded, and they just say, okay, so-and-so is doing well at this particular franchise, I'm just going to buy it. And then it's a major disaster because it wasn't the right fit for, what they were looking for, or they try to change their ideal business to match the franchise company. I see that constantly. So dealing with that right now. Franchise and looking to get into something else, and that's another podcast. That's the After Hours podcast with drinks. So we'll do that another night. You've been in franchising 25 plus years, and we're coming towards the end of the show here. I've been 15, 16, although I have much more white than you. What advice would you give to the first time potential business owner, whether it's a franchise or not, that person looking to become an entrepreneur?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is work, with a great consultant like yourself, and not to toot your horn, but seriously, I think it's daunting, as you mentioned, if you start just looking around on the internet and trying to decipher, first of all, who are the world-class franchisors that are the real deal, and then secondly, how does that really match up for me and what I'm trying to achieve by getting into franchising? So you kill both of those birds, because the reality is your network obviously vets concepts that they allow in. So you're only working with winners to begin with, right, that you're going to be able to refer to. And then secondly, again, you do a great job with what we look at as the matchmaking process. And it's interesting because sometimes I find with candidates, that work with consultants, I'll hear, boy, that was not something I was thinking about at all. Right. That, and even furthermore, maybe I don't even know if I want to look at that, but sometimes I've heard consultants say, look, just take one call with them. This matches your model perfectly of what you want to do. If you're not excited about it, you kick it out. But it's always interesting to me. Sometimes I hear over and over again, that candidates come back and go, wow, just didn't see that one coming. But call after call, I started to get more and more excited and really see why this is such a great match for me. And they end up, really in the end becoming a happy franchisee making money, which is what we want to see in building wealth, And that's a key element of also, I think, retail is it's more so than just building that income, because there's a wealth kind of a strategy there, as well as you're building the business, because it's worth something if you decide to exit and sell at the end. But those are maybe my pieces of advice is really work with a great consultant, make sure that you're looking at a world-class franchisor, because not every franchisor is built the same, and not everyone has the same philosophies either. Quick example, I would never consider a franchisor that had a flat fee royalty, because there's no motivation for them to support you any more than if you're a great franchisee or if you're a poor franchisee, because they're going to get the same amount of money every month. So I would always look at a percentage-based franchisor, because that's a real partner for you, because the better you do, the better they do.
Incentives there, yeah, absolutely. So
system works.
Yeah, no, those are some good points. Lance, I really appreciate it. I'm sure we could be talking forever, but this is great. I'm glad someone else is saying what I'm saying as well. So I wanted to come from you, the who, not the how. So pick up that Dan Sullivan book if you want to connect with Lance, or take a look at any of the Xponential brands, definitely send me a message. I'll definitely can make that connection for you. Lance, appreciate it once again. We'll have this show up in the next couple weeks, and looking forward to sending it over to you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Always fun, and I'm honored to be here. So thanks so much.
Thank you. I'll talk to you.
Okay, bye-bye.